She counted 10 knives sinking into her flesh, one by one, and still she held tight to the kid's hand. When she finally collapsed, all she saw were the golden eyes of a little boy, screaming for help. Then, nothing but darkness. If you've ever felt invisible, like the world wouldn't even notice if you disappeared, if you've ever wondered if anyone would care, this story is for you. The fluorescent lights of Tony's grill flickered, like they always did on Tuesday nights. Sarah Walker wiped down table 7 for the 3rd time. Even though it had been empty for hours, the dinner rush had come and gone, leaving behind the usual mess of ketchup packets and crumpled napkins. She moved through the motions like a ghost, which was fitting, because that's exactly how she felt most days. 28 years old, single, no family to speak of, a cramped 1-bedroom apartment that smelled like mildew no matter how much she scrubbed, and a dead-end job that barely paid the bills, just enough to survive, but not enough to actually live. The bell above the door chimed. Sarah looked up, ready to recite the same tired greeting she had delivered 1,000 times before, but the words died in her throat. A little boy stood in the doorway, alone. He couldn't have been more than 5 years old. His clothes were expensive, the kind of designer fabric that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But his face was streaked with tears, and his small body trembled like a leaf in a winter storm. Sarah set down her rag. Something about this child made her chest tighten, in a way she hadn't felt in years, not since. She pushed the thought away. "Hey there," she said softly, crouching down to his level. "Are you lost, sweetie?" The boy looked at her with eyes that seemed too old for his face, golden, almost amber, with strange vertical pupils that caught the light in an unsettling way. Sarah blinked. Sure, she had imagined it. "The bad men are coming," he whispered. "They want to hurt me." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What bad men? Where are your parents?" But before the boy could answer, the door burst open. 3 men in black coats flooded the diner. They moved with military precision, their eyes scanning the room with cold efficiency. Each of them carried a knife, the blades glinting under the flickering lights. Sarah stood up slowly, positioning herself between the child and the intruders. The other customers, a couple in the corner booth, an old-timer nursing his coffee at the counter, they all froze. Then, one by one, they looked away. The couple suddenly found their phones fascinating. The old man stared into his cup like it held the secrets of the universe. No one moved to help. No one even acknowledged what was happening. Sarah felt the familiar ache of being unseen, but this time it came with something else. Rage. "Step away from the boy," one of the men said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "This doesn't concern you." Sarah looked down at the child. He had grabbed onto her apron, his small fingers clutching the fabric so hard his knuckles turned white. His golden eyes stared up at her, filled with terror and something else. Hope. If you've ever been the only person willing to stand when everyone else looked away, you understand what happened next. "I'm not moving," Sarah said. The man tilted his head, as if her response was the most puzzling thing he had ever heard. Perhaps it was. Perhaps no one had ever told him no before. "You don't understand who we are." Sarah felt her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. "No, but I understand who I am, and I'm not the kind of person who lets a child get hurt." The man smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Then you die with him." Everything after that happened in fragments. The first knife caught her in the shoulder. She gasped, but didn't fall. Instead, she wrapped her arms around the boy, shielding him with her body. The second knife hit her back. She felt the cold metal slide between her ribs, felt the warm rush of blood soaking through her uniform. Still, she didn't let go. The third, fourth, fifth, each one sent a new wave of agony through her body. She stopped counting after that. Or maybe she didn't. Maybe she counted every single one, marking each blade as proof that she was still alive, still holding on. 10. The number burned itself into her consciousness. 10 knives, 10 wounds, 10 reasons she should already be dead. But she wasn't. Not yet. Through the haze of pain. She heard the boy crying, felt his small arms wrapped around her neck, heard him calling for someone, anyone, to help. And then she heard something else. A roar, not a human sound. Something primal, something ancient, something that made every instinct in her body scream to run, even as her legs gave out beneath her. The last thing she saw before the darkness claimed her was a flash of golden eyes, exactly like the boy's. But these eyes belonged to something far more terrifying, something with scales. Sarah woke to pain. It was everywhere. In her shoulder, her back, her sides. Every breath felt like swallowing broken glass. For a long moment, she simply lay there, trying to remember how to exist. Then she remembered. The boy, the knives, the blood. Her eyes flew open. The ceiling above her was made of stone, ancient stone, the kind found in castles and museums, not diners or hospital rooms. Torches lined the walls, their flames casting dancing shadows across intricate carvings she didn't recognize. This was not Tony's grill. This was not any place she had ever seen. Sarah tried to sit up, but her body screamed in protest. She fell back against pillows that felt softer than anything she had ever touched, gasping for breath. "I wouldn't recommend moving." Zoe, the voice came from her left. Cold, deep, commanding. Sarah turned her head slowly, each movement sending fresh waves of pain through her injuries. 8 men stood around her bed. All of them wore black coats that seemed to absorb the light. All of them had the same cold, expressionless faces, and all of them were looking at her like she was either a threat or a puzzle they couldn't quite solve. But it was the 9th man who held her attention. He stood slightly apart from the others, his posture radiating authority in a way she had never witnessed before. His skin was pale, almost luminescent in the torchlight. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that was both beautiful and terrifying, and his eyes, golden, with vertical pupils that caught the firelight and seemed to glow from within, just like the boy's. Sarah tried to speak, but her throat was too dry. She managed only a rasp that barely qualified as a word. "The child." The man tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her want to shrink into the pillows and disappear. "My son is safe," he said, "because of you." Relief flooded through her. So powerful, it brought tears to her eyes. She hadn't failed. She hadn't let him get hurt. Whatever else happened, that one thing was true. But the relief was quickly replaced by confusion. And then fear. "Where am I?" The man did not smile. "My castle. You were brought here after the attack. My healers have been working to keep you alive. For the past 3 days. 3 days? Sarah tried to process this information, but it felt like trying to hold water in her hands. Everything kept slipping away. "Who are you?" She already knew the answer. Some part of her had known it from the moment she saw those golden eyes, but she needed to hear it. The man was silent for a long moment. Then he stepped closer, and Sarah noticed something that made her blood freeze. His left hand was not a hand at all. It was covered in scales, dark green like emeralds in shadow. His fingers ended in claws, each one capable of tearing through steel. "I am Kael Draven," he said, "Lord of the Eastern Realm, Keeper of the Ancient Fire. The humans call me many things, but most know me simply as the Dragon King." The Dragon King. Sarah had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. Tales of powerful beings who ruled from hidden kingdoms, who could shift between human and dragon form, who possessed wealth and power beyond imagination. She had always assumed they were just stories, fairy tales told to children to make them believe in magic. But there was nothing fictional about the man standing before her, nothing imaginary about the scales on his hand, or the ancient power that radiated from his presence. The Dragon King was real, and she had just taken 10 knives for his son. Sarah felt hysteria building in her chest. She wanted to laugh or cry, or possibly scream, maybe all three at once. "I don't understand," she managed to say. "Why would anyone want to hurt a child?" The Dragon King's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something dark passed through those golden eyes, something that looked almost like grief. "Power," he said simply. "My son is the sole heir to my kingdom. There are those who would see my bloodline ended." Sarah thought of the men in black. Their cold eyes, their efficient movements, professionals, she realized, trained killers sent to murder a 5-year-old boy. The thought made her want to vomit. "The men who attacked," she said slowly. "Who sent them?" The Dragon King did not answer immediately. Instead, he turned to one of the guards. "Leave us." The 8 men filed out without a word, their footsteps silent on the stone floor. Only when the heavy door closed behind them did the Dragon King speak again. "That is what I intend to find out." He moved closer to her bed, and Sarah found herself pressing back into the pillows, not from fear exactly. Something else, something she couldn't name. "But first, I need to know who you are." Sarah blinked. "Me? I'm nobody. Just a waitress. A waitress who took 10 knives for a child she had never met. A waitress who stood when everyone else looked away. A waitress who somehow survived wounds that should have killed her within minutes." He was close now, close enough that she could see the faint pattern of scales along his jawline, barely visible unless you knew to look for them, close enough that she could smell something like smoke and ancient forests emanating from his skin. "No," the Dragon King said softly. "You are not nobody, and I intend to find out exactly who you are." Before Sarah could respond, a smaller voice cut through the tension. "Daddy!" Both Sarah and the Dragon King turned toward the door. A little boy stood there, his golden eyes wide with excitement. He wore what looked like silk pajamas, and his dark hair stuck up in all directions like he had just woken from sleep. "Theo." The Dragon King's voice held a warning, but also something softer. "You should be in bed." But she woke up. Theo ignored his father entirely and ran toward Sarah, his small feet pattering against the stone floor. Before anyone could stop him, he had climbed onto the bed and wrapped his arms around her. Pain exploded through Sarah's injuries, but she didn't care. She didn't push him away. Instead, she found her arms moving on their own, returning the embrace. "You saved me," Theo whispered against her shoulder. "You didn't let them take me." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't know when she had started crying. "Of course I didn't," she said. "Of course. If you have felt this moment of holding a child who trusts you completely, who sees you when no one else does, then you understand why Sarah made her next decision. She was not going to let anything happen to this boy, not while she was still breathing." The Dragon King watched the scene in silence. His expression was unreadable, but something shifted in his golden eyes, something that looked almost like recognition. He had been searching for someone to protect his son, someone loyal, someone brave, someone who could not be bought or threatened. He had just found her. But not everyone in the castle was pleased by this development. In a chamber on the other side of the castle, a woman watched through a mirror that showed more than reflections. Her face was beautiful. Her clothes were immaculate, and her smile did not reach her cold, calculating eyes. Elena Voss had been the Dragon King's chosen bride for 3 months now. 3 months of playing the perfect partner. the ideal future queen. 3 months of waiting for her plan to come to fruition. The boy was supposed to be dead by now. With the heir gone, her own future children would inherit everything. The kingdom, the power, the treasure that had been hoarded for 1,000 years. But this waitress had ruined everything. "She is awake," Elena murmured to the shadow beside her. "And the king seems interested." The shadow did not respond with words. It rarely did. "This changes nothing," Elena continued. "The waitress is no one. A commoner who got lucky. She will be gone within the week." But even as she spoke, Elena felt a flicker of uncertainty. She had seen the way the Dragon King looked at the wounded woman, had seen the way his son clung to her. This waitress might be a bigger problem than she anticipated. No matter. Elena Voss had not come this far by giving up at the first obstacle. She would simply have to adjust her plan. And if the waitress had to die to make that happen, well, that was just collateral damage. Back in the healing chamber, Sarah had finally stopped crying. Theo had fallen asleep against her side, his small hand clutching hers, even in slumber. The Dragon King had not moved. He stood at the foot of her bed, watching them with an expression she could not decipher. "He likes you," he said finally. Sarah looked down at the sleeping boy. "I just met him. Children know. They sense things adults have forgotten how to feel." He paused. "My son hasn't let anyone hold him since his mother died. Not the nannies, not the tutors, not even me. And yet here he is, sleeping in your arms like he's known you forever." Sarah didn't know what to say to that. The weight of the child's trust felt enormous, precious, and terrifying all at once. What was his mother's name? The question slipped out before she could stop it. The Dragon King stiffened, and for a moment Sarah thought she had gone too far. But then he answered, "Lyra. Her name was Lyra. She died 2 years ago. 2 years. The same amount of time since Sarah had lost her own child, since her entire world had crumbled to ashes, and she had rebuilt herself from nothing but grief and determination." "I'm sorry," she whispered. The Dragon King looked at her strangely. "As am I." They stayed that way for a long moment. Two broken people finding unexpected common ground in their losses. Then the door opened, and a guard entered with news that would change everything. "My lord," he said, bowing low, "we have found something at the scene of the attack, something that may identify who ordered it." The Dragon King's eyes narrowed. "Show me." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "You will stay here," he said to Sarah. "My guards will protect you. No one enters this room without my permission." Sarah nodded, though she wasn't sure what she was agreeing to. "And when I return," the Dragon King continued, "we will continue our conversation. I still have many questions for you. Sarah Walker." It was the first time he had used her name. The first acknowledgement that she was more than just the waitress who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. As the door closed behind him, Sarah looked down at the sleeping child in her arms. "What have I gotten myself into?" she whispered. But deep down, she knew the answer. Something that would either save her or destroy her. And she had no idea which one it would be. The door opened again before Sarah could process everything that had happened. But this time, the person who entered was not a guard. She was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that made other women feel invisible. Dark hair cascading over shoulders draped in silk, pale skin that seemed to glow in the torchlight, a dress that probably cost more than Sarah would make in 10 years of working at Tony's Grill, and a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Kyle, darling." The woman glided across the room like she owned it. Perhaps she did. "I came as soon as I heard. Is he all right? Is our boy all right?" Our boy. Sarah felt something cold settle in her stomach. She did not know why. Theo stirred against her side. his eyes fluttering open. When he saw the woman, he did not smile. He did not reach for her. Instead, he pressed closer to Sarah, his small fingers tightening around her hand. The Dragon King watched this interaction with an expression Sarah could not read. Eleanor. His voice was neutral. Theo is fine. Thanks to this woman. Eleanor turned her attention to Sarah for the first time. Her eyes swept over the bandages, the blood-stained sheets. The pale face of a waitress who had no business being in a castle. Yeah, she tilted her head, and for just a moment, something flickered in her gaze, something that made Sarah's skin crawl. I heard what happened. How brave of you. The words were right, the tone was right, but something was wrong. Sarah had spent her entire life being invisible, watching from the sidelines, observing without being observed. And in all those years, she had learned to read people, to see the truth behind the masks. This woman was wearing a mask, a very good one, but a mask nonetheless. I was just doing what anyone would do, Sarah said carefully. Eleanor laughed. It was a pleasant sound, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, but Sarah heard the dissonance underneath. Anyone? Darling, I saw the other people in that restaurant. They did nothing. Only you moved. Only you stood between my future stepson and those horrible men. Future stepson. So this was the Dragon King's fiancée, the woman who would become Theo's mother. Theo pressed even closer to Sarah, and she felt his small body trembling. Why? Elena continued, stepping closer to the bed. I simply must know more about you. Where are you from? Do you have family? What brought you to that diner at that exact moment? The questions came rapid fire, each one delivered with that same pleasant smile that never touched her eyes. Sarah felt like she was being interrogated rather than thanked. She needs rest. The Dragon King's voice cut through Elena's questioning like a blade through silk. His golden eyes were fixed on his fiancée, and something passed between them that Sarah could not interpret. Of course, Elena took a step back, her smile never wavering. How thoughtless of me. The poor dear has been through so much. She turned to Sarah. We will talk more when you are feeling better. I want to know everything about the woman who saved my future son's life. The way she said it made Sarah feel like a specimen being studied, rather than a person being appreciated. Eleanor swept out of the room in a rustle of silk and expensive perfume, the moment the door closed behind her. Theo let out a breath he had been holding. I don't like her, he whispered, so quietly that Sarah almost missed it. She looked down at the boy in her arms. His golden eyes were wide, vulnerable, filled with something that looked like fear. Why not? Theo did not answer. Instead, he buried his face in Sarah's shoulder and stayed there. The Dragon King had not moved. He stood by the door, watching his son cling to a stranger as if she were a lifeline. His expression was unreadable, but his clawed hand twitched at his side. He does not usually take to people, he said finally. Elena has been trying to bond with him for 3 months. He barely looks at her. Sarah did not know what to say to that. She only knew that the little boy in her arms felt safe with her, and she would do anything to keep him feeling that way. Over the next few days, Sarah began to heal. The Dragon King's healers were nothing like human doctors. They used herbs and incantations, potions that smelled of ancient forests and tasted like liquid fire. Each treatment left her feeling stronger, though the pain never fully disappeared. And each day, Theo came to visit. He would appear at her door every morning, his golden eyes bright with excitement. He would climb onto her bed and tell her about his lessons, his toys, his dreams. He would show her drawings he had made, most of them featuring dragons of various colors soaring through cloudy skies. He never drew people. When Sarah asked why, he simply shrugged and said that people leave. What if you asked folks? if they'd stepped between a kid and 10 knives, knowing they might die? Think about that. And if you have an answer, drop it in the comments below. I want to know. I really want to know. The Dragon King visited too. Not as often as Theo, but enough that Sarah began to understand the rhythm of his days. He'd come in the evenings, after his councils and court sessions were done. He'd stand by the window, looking out at a world Sarah couldn't see, and ask her questions. Where did you grow up? A small town, you wouldn't have heard of it. Do you have family? Not anymore. What happened? A long silence hung in the air. Then Sarah told him something she hadn't told anyone in 2 years. I had a son. His name was Daniel. He died when he was 4 years old. The words came out flat, emotionless. That was the only way she could say them, without completely breaking down. The Dragon King turned from the window. His golden eyes studied her face, searching for something. How? Cancer. By the time they found it, it was too late. He fought for 8 months, and then he stopped fighting. Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She didn't bother to wipe them away. After Daniel died, I stopped caring about anything. I moved to the city because I couldn't stand being in that town, where I'd raised him. I took the job at Tony's Grill because it didn't matter what job I took. Nothing mattered anymore. She glanced at Theo, who had fallen asleep against her side, his breathing soft and even. Until that night, until I saw a little boy who needed help. And suddenly, for the first time in 2 years, something mattered again. The Dragon King was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost human. My wife died, protecting Theo. There was an assassination attempt 2 years ago. She threw herself in front of the knife. She saved him, but she did not survive. Sarah understood then, the distance in his eyes, the coldness in his voice, the way he held himself apart from everyone, even his own son. He was grieving, just like her. You blame yourself, she said. It wasn't a question. The Dragon King didn't deny it. I should have been there. I should have protected them both. Instead, I was dealing with some trivial border dispute while my wife bled out in our son's nursery. His clawed hand clenched into a fist. Sarah could see the scales rippling up his arm, the dragon inside him, fighting to emerge. She reached out without thinking. Her hand, small and bandaged, covered his clawed one. The Dragon King froze. She didn't think anyone had touched him willingly in a very long time. It wasn't your fault, Sarah said, just as what happened to Daniel wasn't mine. We tell ourselves, we could have done something different. We torture ourselves with what-ifs. But the truth is, we did the best we could with what we knew at the time. He stared at her hand on his. The scales slowly receded, revealing human skin beneath. How do you live with it? Sarah thought about the question. Really thought about it. I didn't. Not for a long time. I just existed. Went through the motions. Waited for the pain to kill me, or for life to give me a reason to keep going. She looked down at Theo, and then it did. The Dragon King followed her gaze to his sleeping son. Something shifted in his expression, something that looked almost like hope. But their moment of connection was interrupted by a knock at the door. A guard entered, bowing low. My lord, we have found something. The Dragon King straightened immediately, all softness gone. What? The guard hesitated, his eyes flickering to Sarah. You may speak freely. The Dragon King's voice was sharp. She has earned that much. The guard nodded. The knives used in the attack. We traced them to a supplier here in the castle. The order was placed 3 days before the attack, and the signature on the order. matches someone in your inner circle. Sarah felt ice form in her veins. Who? The guard pulled a piece of parchment from his coat. A receipt. He handed it to the Dragon King. The Dragon King looked at the signature. His face went completely still. Then his eyes lifted to Sarah. This signature. He turned the paper so she could see. Do you recognize this handwriting? Sarah looked at the elegant script. She had seen it before, on the invitation cards scattered around the castle, on the notes Eleanor had sent, wishing her a speedy recovery. Her hand trembled. Yes, she whispered. I recognize it. But before she could say more, another guard burst into the room. My lord! He was breathless. We found something else. Security recordings from Tony's grill. You need to see this. The Dragon King looked at Sarah, then at his sleeping son, then back at Sarah. Stay with him, he said. And then he was gone. The security room was buried deep in the castle, a chamber filled with crystals that glowed with captured moments. The Dragon King had never liked this place. It felt like spying on the dead. But now, he stood before the largest crystal, watching the events of that night unfold. The recording began normally. A quiet diner. A tired waitress wiping down tables. Nothing remarkable. Nothing to suggest that in a few moments, everything would change. Then the boy entered. The Dragon King felt his breath catch. Theo, his son, alone and terrified. He had known the child had been taken from the castle, knew that Elena had reported him missing from his lessons, but seeing it like this, seeing his son stumble into a human restaurant, looking for help, broke something inside him. He watched as Sarah noticed the boy, watched as she immediately stopped what she was doing and approached him, watched as she knelt down to his level, her face soft with concern. The other customers barely looked up from their meals, and then the door burst open. 3 men in black, professional killers, sent by someone who wanted his bloodline ended. The Dragon King had interrogated the one survivor. He knew the details. But knowing and seeing were 2 very different things. He watched as the waitress, this nobody from nowhere, stepped between the assassins and his son, watched as she wrapped her arms around the child, shielding him with her body. He watched as the first knife struck. She did not fall. The second knife she did not let go. Third, fourth, fifth. The Dragon King's claws were digging into the table, leaving deep gouges in the ancient wood. He could not look away, could not stop watching. As this woman, this stranger, took wound after wound for a child she had never met. 6, 7, 8. Her uniform was soaked with blood. Her face was pale. Her body was failing, but her arms never loosened around Theo. 9. She fell to her knees, but still, she held on. 10. The Dragon King stopped the recording. His fists were white, his claws had shredded through the table. The scales had spread across his entire body, his dragon form fighting to emerge in response to the rage flooding through him. He had seen battles, he had witnessed atrocities, he had lived for centuries, and thought nothing could shock him anymore. He was wrong. This woman had given everything for his son, a child she did not know, a child she had no reason to protect. She had stood when everyone else looked away. She had fought when she had no weapons. She had died, or nearly died, to keep a little boy safe. And now he knew who had ordered it. The signature on the receipt, Elena's handwriting. But he needed more. He needed proof that could not be denied, because Elena was clever. She would have prepared for this possibility. She would have explanations, and excuses, and alibis. He needed an eyewitness. He needed Sarah. When the Dragon King returned to Sarah's room, he found her exactly where he had left her, Theo was still sleeping, curled against her side like a kitten seeking warmth, and Sarah was watching the door, with eyes that were far too aware for someone who had nearly died. "You watched the recording," she said. It was not a question. "Yes." The Dragon King crossed the room in 3 strides. He stood at the foot of her bed, his golden eyes burning with an intensity that should have frightened her. But Sarah did not flinch. Pause for possible YouTube annotation. "You took 10 knives for my son." The Dragon King's voice was rough, like he was fighting to keep control. 10. Any one of them should have killed you. The healers do not understand how you survived. Neither do I. Sarah looked down at Theo. His small face was peaceful in sleep, his fingers still curled around hers. "I did not think about surviving," she said quietly. "I just knew I could not let him get hurt." "Why?" She met his eyes then, those golden eyes that were so like his son's. And she told him the truth, because 2 years ago I held my own son as he died, and I could not do anything to save him. She felt the familiar ache of being unseen in her chest, the wound that never fully healed. When I saw Theo, when I saw those men coming for him, all I could think was that this time I could do something. This time I could save him, even if it cost me everything. The Dragon King was silent for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He sat down on the edge of her bed. The ancient ruler of dragons, feared throughout the realms, sat beside a human waitress, like she was an equal. "The night my wife died," he said slowly, "I was in a council meeting, arguing about trade agreements, and while I was discussing the price of silk, assassins were breaking into my castle." He paused. "I did not hear her screams. I was too far away. By the time I arrived, she was already gone, and Theo was covered in her blood." Sarah felt tears slipping down her cheeks. Not for herself, for him. The Dragon King looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the man beneath the monster. "I have spent 2 years searching for who ordered that attack. 2 years interrogating and investigating and getting nowhere. And now I find out that my own fiancé—" He could not finish the sentence. "How do you know it was her?" "The knives. They came from our own supplier." The order was signed in her hand. The Dragon King pulled out the receipt. "And the timing. She arrived at the castle 3 months after Lyra died. Convenient, is it not?" Sarah thought about it. Thought about Elena and her questions, her interest in where Sarah came from, her desire to know everything about the woman who saved her future son's life. "She is afraid of me," Sarah realized aloud. "She is afraid I know something." "Do you?" The question hung in the air between them. Sarah closed her eyes. She tried to remember that night. The chaos, the pain, the fear. It was all a blur of blood and knives, and the feeling of a child's hand in hers. But there was something else, something at the edge of her memory. "Before I passed out," she said slowly, "I saw someone. In the window of the building across the street. Someone watching." She opened her eyes. A woman. Dark hair. Expensive clothes. She was smiling. The Dragon King's entire body went still. "Would you recognize her if you saw her again?" Sarah thought of Elena, her pleasant smile that never reached her eyes, her interrogating questions disguised as concern. "Yes," she said, "I would recognize her." "Then tomorrow," the Dragon King said, "we end this. I am calling a court assembly. Every noble in the realm will be present, and you will tell them exactly what you saw." Sarah's heart clenched. "You want me to accuse your fiancé of attempted murder in front of everyone? I want you to tell the truth." His golden eyes held hers. "That is all I have ever wanted." He stood to leave, but Sarah caught his hand. The human one. He froze at her touch. She wants me dead, Sarah said quietly. If I accuse her publicly, she will try to kill me again. The Dragon King looked down at her small hand on his. Then he made a vow that would change everything. She will not touch you. I swear it on my blood, on my fire, on everything I am and everything I have ever been. He leaned closer. Sarah could feel the heat radiating from his skin. Anyone who tries to harm you out will answer to me, and my answers tend to be final. It was not a threat. It was a promise. And Sarah believed him. The night before the assembly was long. Sarah could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw knives, felt blood, heard a little boy crying for help. She lay in the darkness, staring at the stone ceiling, trying to prepare herself for what was coming. A soft knock at her door made her sit up. "Come in," she said, expecting a guard or perhaps one of the healers. It was Theo. The little boy stood in the doorway in his pajamas, his golden eyes red from crying. "I had a nightmare," he whispered. "Can I stay with you?" Sarah did not hesitate. She lifted the blankets and Theo climbed in, curling against her like he had done every day since she woke up. His small body was trembling. "What did you dream about?" Sarah asked softly. "The men in black," Theo said. "They were hurting you again, and I could not stop them." Sarah felt her heart break. This child had seen her nearly die, had watched as she took knife after knife for him, and now he was having nightmares about it. "It was just a dream," she said, stroking his hair. "I am right here. I am not going anywhere." "Promise?" The word was so small, so fragile, so full of hope. Sarah thought about her own son, about the promises she had made him, promises she could not keep, promises that cancer and fate and cruelty had broken. But this time was different. This time, she had a choice. "I promise," she said. Theo fell asleep in her arms, his breathing evening out as the nightmares faded. And Sarah held him all night, watching the shadows move across the walls, waiting for morning. She did not know what the next day would bring, did not know if she would survive the assembly, did not know if Elena had already planned her death. But she knew one thing. She was going to protect this boy, no matter what it cost her, no matter what she had to sacrifice. She had lost one son. She was not going to lose another. When the doors to the great hall opened, Sarah felt her knees go weak. The room was massive. Cathedral ceilings stretched toward the sky, supported by pillars carved with dragons in flight. Torches lined the walls, casting flickering light across hundreds of faces. Nobles from every corner of the realm sat in tiered seats, their expensive clothes and jeweled accessories glittering in the firelight. And at the center of it all, on a throne made of obsidian and gold, sat the Dragon King. He looked different here, more terrifying. His scales were visible along his neck and hands. His eyes glowed like molten gold. The small horns on his head caught the light, reminding everyone exactly what he was, not just a king, a dragon. Sarah walked down the central aisle on shaking legs. She was still healing, still weak. Each step sent pain shooting through her wounds, but she did not stop. She had made a promise. Elena sat beside the throne, her position making it clear she was the chosen bride. She wore a gown of midnight blue that made her look like a queen. Her smile was serene, confident. But Sarah saw her hands, saw the way her fingers gripped the arms of her chair, saw the tension in her shoulders. She was afraid. Good. Sarah stopped at the base of the throne and bowed. The Dragon King acknowledged her with a slight nod. "You have been summoned to give testimony," he said, his voice carrying through the massive hall. "About the events that occurred at Tony's Grill 5 days ago. You will speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Is that understood? Yes, your Majesty, but then begin. Sarah took a breath. Then she told her story. She told them about the quiet night, about the little boy who walked through the door, about the fear in his golden eyes. She told them about the men in black, their knives glinting in the fluorescent lights. She told them about the other customers who looked away, who pretended nothing was happening, who left a child to die. She told them about her choice. I stepped between them and the prince, she said. I did not think about it. I just moved. And then the first knife hit. The hall was utterly silent. Even the nobles who had been whispering among themselves had gone quiet. I felt each one. Sarah's voice was steady, even though her hands were shaking. 10 knives. 10 wounds. I counted them, not because I wanted to, because counting was the only way I could prove to myself I was still alive. She looked at Theo, who sat beside his father on a smaller throne. His golden eyes were fixed on her, wide with something between awe and grief. I did not let go, Sarah continued. Not once, not when they were stabbing me, not when I fell, not when I thought I was dying, because the only thing that mattered was keeping him safe. A murmur ran through the crowd. Even the most hardened nobles seemed moved by her words. But Sarah was not finished. When I fell, she said, I saw something. Through the window of the building across the street, someone was watching. A woman with dark hair and expensive clothes. The murmuring grew louder. She was smiling, Sarah said, like she was enjoying the show. Elena stood up, her face a mask of elegant outrage. This is ridiculous. She gestured dismissively at Sarah. You cannot possibly expect us to believe the ravings of a common waitress. She was delirious, dying. She could not have seen anything clearly. The Dragon King raised his hand. Silence fell. Let her finish. Elena sat back down, but her eyes were burning with fury. Sarah turned to face her directly, and for the first time, she felt no fear, only certainty. I saw your face, she said to Elena, in that window. Watching as your hired killers tried to murder a child. The hall erupted. Nobles shouted over each other. Guards reached for weapons. Elena screamed denials, while Elena looked at the Dragon King with tears streaming down her face. This is madness. She fell to her knees before the throne. Kyle, please. You know me. You know I would never hurt Theo. I love him. I love you. The Dragon King did not move, did not speak. He simply reached into his coat and pulled out the receipt. Your handwriting, he said flatly. Your signature. Ordering the knives used in the attack. Elena went pale. That is a forgery. It must be. Someone is framing me. Perhaps. The Dragon King stood. Let us test that theory. He gestured to one of his guard. Bring it. The guard bowed and left. When he returned, he was carrying something small and glittering. A ring. This was found at the scene of the attack, the Dragon King said. Dropped near the entrance to the diner. It was stepped on during the chaos, bent and scratched. He held up the ring, and everyone in the hall could see the crest engraved on its surface, Elena's family crest. Her face went white. She looked around wildly, searching for an escape. That does not prove anything. Anyone could have stolen my ring. Anyone. The Dragon King descended from his throne, each step deliberate, predatory. Or perhaps the woman who ordered the attack was careless. Perhaps she wanted to watch her plan succeed. Perhaps she stood too close to the action and did not realize she lost her ring until it was too late. Elena backed away, but there was nowhere to go. Guards had surrounded her. Please. She was crying now, real tears of terror. Kyle. Please, I can explain. Explain. The Dragon King stopped in front of her. and for a moment. Sarah saw the dragon behind the man, scales rippling across his skin, eyes burning with ancient fire. "Explain to me why you tried to murder my son." "Because he stands in my way." The words burst from Elena before she could stop them. Desperation had broken through her carefully crafted mask. "Because as long as he lives, my children will never inherit. Because I have spent 3 months playing the perfect bride. And I am tired of waiting." The hall went silent. Eleanor seemed to realize what she had said. Her face crumpled. No, that is not what I... But it was too late. The Dragon King raised his clawed hand. Guards seized Elena by the arms. "Elena Voss." His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "You are charged with the attempted murder of Prince Theo Draven, heir to the Eastern Realm. You are charged with the attempted murder of Sarah Walker, an innocent witness to your crimes, and you are charged with treason against the crown." Eleanor screamed as the guards began to drag her away. "You can't do this to me. I'm supposed to be queen. I deserve to be queen. Her voice faded as the doors closed behind her. The Dragon King turned to face the assembled nobles, a palpable silence falling over the room. "Let this be a lesson," he said, his voice resonating with power. "To anyone who thinks they can harm my family without consequence, I do not forgive, I do not forget, and I do not show mercy to those who threaten what is mine." His eyes found Sarah in the crowd, a beacon of humanity amidst the opulence. "And let it be known that this woman, Sarah Walker, saved my son's life. She stood when everyone else fled. She fought. When she had no weapons, she took 10 knives for a child she had never met." He descended the steps, each footfall echoing in the vast hall, and stopped in front of her. "From this day forward, she is under my protection. Any who harm her, answer to me. Any who threaten her, face the fire. Is that understood?" The hall erupted in murmured assent, a wave of nervous agreement washing over the nobles. But the Dragon King was not finished. He had much more to say. "Sarah Walker." He held out his hand, his scaled skin gleaming in the torchlight. "Will you accept a position in my household? Not as a servant, not as a guest, but as the protector of Prince Theo, his official guardian, his mother, in all the ways that matter." Sarah stared at his hand, at the scales that rippled across his skin, at the claws that could tear through steel. She could feel the immense power radiating from him, and she saw something else. A man who had lost his wife. A father who was terrified of losing his son. A king who needed someone he could trust. She took his hand. Her small hand swallowed in his. "Yes," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her heart. "I accept." The hall erupted in cheers, a roar of approval, but Sarah barely heard them, because Theo had launched himself from his throne and was running toward her, his golden eyes bright with tears. "Mama!" he cried, throwing his arms around her. "You are staying. You are really staying." Sarah felt tears streaming down her own face, a torrent of emotion she hadn't expected. She had not heard that word in 2 years, had not thought she would ever hear it again. "I am staying," she whispered, holding him close. "I am never letting go." And she meant it. Every word. 1 month later. The castle had changed, dramatically. It was warmer somehow, more alive. The servants had noticed, the guards had noticed. Even the ancient stones seemed to sense that something was different. Sarah had been given chambers near Theo's rooms. She woke every morning to the sound of his footsteps racing down the hall, eager to start another day of adventures. She spent her afternoons teaching him to read, to draw, to see the world beyond the castle walls. She spent her evenings by his bedside, telling him stories until he fell asleep. She had found purpose again, found meaning, found love. But there was something else growing, something she had not expected. a connection that defied logic. The Dragon King visited her chambers every evening after Theo was asleep. At first, he came to discuss his son's progress. Then he came to share meals. Then he simply came to talk. They talked about Lyra, about Daniel, about the grief that had hollowed them both out. They talked about politics and poetry, about dragons and dreams. They talked about everything and nothing, and somewhere along the way, Sarah stopped seeing him as a king, a distant, powerful ruler. She started seeing him as Cale, a man with a broken heart. Tonight, he sat by her window, watching the moons rise over the mountains. His scales were hidden, his horns barely visible in the soft light. He looked almost human. "I was wrong about you," he said quietly, his voice barely a whisper. Sarah looked up from the book she was reading, her heart pounding in her chest. "Wrong how?" "When they first brought you to the castle," he turned to face her, his golden eyes filled with a strange mix of vulnerability and power. "I thought you were a threat, a plant sent by my enemies to get close to my son. I ordered my guards to watch your every move, to report any suspicious behavior." Sarah felt a chill, despite the warmth of the room. "I did not know that. You were not supposed to." Kyle's golden eyes held hers, his gaze intense. "But then I watched you with Theo, watched the way he trusted you, the way he laughed with you, the way he called you Mama." He paused, a shadow of sadness crossing his face. "My son has not laughed since his mother died. He has not trusted anyone, and yet, with you, he is happy. For the first time in 2 years, he is happy." Sarah set down her book, her hands trembling slightly. "Kyle." "I watched the recording of that night." He stood and crossed to her chair, his movements fluid and graceful despite his size. "Every night for a week, I watched you take those knives for him. I watched you refuse to let go, and I tried to understand how a stranger could love a child she had never met, enough to die for him." He knelt before her, the Dragon King, the most powerful being in the realm, kneeling at her feet, like a supplicant. "And then I realized," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "you did not see a stranger that night. You saw Daniel. You saw every child who needed protecting. You saw a second chance." Sarah felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She couldn't hold them back any longer. "I used to pray for death," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "After Daniel, every night. I would lie in that moldy apartment and beg whatever gods existed to let me die in my sleep, to let the pain stop. And now. Sarah touched his face, his beautiful, terrifying face, with its hints of scales and ancient power. "Now, I want to live, for Theo, for whatever future might exist, for you." Kyle's breath caught. "Maya, I know it is inappropriate." She tried to pull back, suddenly self-conscious. "I know I am just a waitress. And you are a king. I know there are thousands of noble women who would be better suited." "No." The word was quiet, but absolute. "There is no one better suited," Kyle said, his voice filled with conviction. "There is no one braver, no one truer, no one more worthy of standing beside me." He took her hands, his grip firm but gentle. "Sarah Walker, you walked into Tony's grill and changed everything. You saved my son, you healed my heart, you made me remember what it feels like to hope." "What are you saying?" "I am saying." He rose and pulled her to her feet, his eyes burning with an intensity that took her breath away. "That I am done being alone, done pushing everyone away, done pretending I do not feel what I feel." He cupped her face in his hands, one human, one scaled, both infinitely gentle. "I am saying, I love you, Sarah Walker, and if you will have me, I want to spend the rest of my considerably long life proving it. Sarah looked into his golden eyes, those ancient, powerful, vulnerable eyes, and she answered, without hesitation. "Yes," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "Yes." When he kissed her, she felt fire, not the destructive kind, the kind that warms, the kind that protects, the kind that transforms. And somewhere, in a chamber down the hall, a little boy with golden eyes smiled in his sleep. His family was finally complete. 6 months later, the realm gathered for a royal wedding, a spectacular event, but it was not just a wedding. It was a celebration of something far more powerful than politics or alliances. It was a celebration of love, real love, the kind that survives tragedy, the kind that blooms in the darkest places, the kind that transforms strangers into family. Sarah stood before the mirror in her chambers, barely recognizing herself. The gown she wore was made of dragon silk, the rarest fabric in the realm. It shimmered with colors that seemed to shift in the light, gold and green, and deepest blue. On her head sat a crown, not because she had been born to royalty, but because she had earned it. "Mom?" She turned. Theo stood in the doorway, dressed in his finest clothes. His golden eyes were bright with excitement. "You look beautiful," he said. Sarah felt tears threatening. "Thank you, sweetheart." Theo crossed the room and took her hand. The same hand she had held that night at Tony's grill, the same hand she had refused to let go. "I am glad you are my mom now," he said. "Really and officially." Sarah knelt down to his level. "I am glad too, more than you will ever know." She pulled out a small photograph from her pocket, worn and faded, but still recognizable. A little boy with dark hair and a bright smile. "Daniel, this is your brother," she said softly. "He is watching over both of us, and I think he would have loved you very much." Theo looked at the photograph with solemn eyes. Then he nodded. "I will make him proud," he said. "I will be the best prince ever, for him and for you." Sarah hugged him tightly. "You already are." The ceremony was magnificent. Dragons flew overhead, their scales catching the sunlight. Nobles from every realm attended, their gifts piled in mountains. The common people lined the streets, cheering for their new queen. But Sarah saw none of it. She only saw Cale. He stood at the altar, waiting for her. His scales were visible today, a testament to his true nature. His small horns caught the light. His clawed hand rested at his side. He was terrifying. He was beautiful. He was hers. Sarah walked down the aisle on legs that did not shake. She had faced 10 knives for a child she did not know. She could face this. Theo walked beside her, carrying a pillow with the rings. His job as ring-bearer was a position he had lobbied for aggressively, and won. When Sarah reached the altar, Kyle took her hands. "You know," he whispered, "when Marcus first brought you to the castle, I ordered him to find out everything about you, every secret, every hidden shame." Sarah raised an eyebrow. And he found a waitress, with a dead child and a broken heart, and nothing in the world worth living for. He squeezed her hands. "He found the bravest person I have ever known." The officiant began the ceremony, ancient words in a language Sarah did not fully understand. But she understood enough. She understood that she was promising forever, and she meant it. When the time came for vows, Cale went first. "Sarah Walker," he said, loud enough for the entire assembly to hear, "6 months ago, you walked into Tony's grill, and my life changed forever. You stood when everyone else ran. You fought when you had no weapons. You died, or nearly died, for a child you had never met." His golden eyes held hers. "I have lived for centuries. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed wonders and horrors beyond imagining. but I have never seen anything as beautiful as the sight of you, covered in blood, refusing to let go of my son. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. I vow to protect you, as you protected Theo. I vow to love you, as you deserve to be loved. I vow to spend every day of my eternal life making sure you know how precious you are. And when my days finally end, I vow to find you again in whatever comes next, because one lifetime with you is not enough. 1,000 lifetimes would not be enough. It was Sarah's turn. She took a breath. Then she spoke from the heart. Kyle Draven, 6 months ago. I was already dead. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. I had lost everything. My son, my hope, my reason to keep going. I was just waiting for my body to catch up with my soul. She glanced at Theo, who was watching with wide, happy eyes. And then a little boy walked into Tony's grill, a little boy with golden eyes who needed help. And something inside me woke up. Something I thought had died with Daniel. The part of me that still knew how to love. The part of me that still knew how to fight. The part of me that still believed that some things are worth dying for. She turned back to Kale. You gave me my son back, she said. Not Daniel. I will always miss Daniel. But Theo filled the hole in my heart that I thought would never heal. And you. She touched his face. You gave me a reason to hope again. A reason to dream. A reason to believe that even after the worst tragedy, joy is still possible. I vow to stand beside you, fight in peace and in war, in joy and in sorrow. I vow to love your son as my own, because he already is, and I vow to love you, Kyle Draven. Not because you are a king, not because you are a dragon, but because you are the man who saw me when I was invisible, who valued me when I had nothing, who loved me when I thought I was unlovable. The officiant asked for the rings. Theo stepped forward proudly, holding up the pillow. Both rings glowed with an inner light. Dragon magic, Kyle had explained. They would bind them together in ways that went beyond human understanding. Sarah slipped the ring onto Kale's finger. He slipped the ring onto hers, and she felt it. The connection, the bond, the magic that would tie them together for as long as they both lived. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared, king and queen, bound by blood and fire and love. You may kiss your bride. Kyle did not hesitate. When his lips met hers, the dragons overhead roared in celebration, the crowd erupted in cheers, and somewhere, Sarah was certain, 2 little boys were watching from beyond the veil, Daniel and the ghost of who Theo used to be before his mother died, both of them smiling, both of them finally at peace. The reception lasted well into the night. There was food and dancing, and more joy than Sarah had thought possible. Nobles who had once looked at her with suspicion now bowed with respect. Servants who had been wary now smiled with genuine warmth. She was queen now, not because she had been born to it, but because she had earned it. When the festivities finally wound down, Sarah found herself on a balcony overlooking the kingdom. The moons hung low in the sky. The mountains in the distance were silver in the light. Kyle found her there, a sleeping Theo in his arms. He wore himself out, Kyle said with a smile, insisted on dancing with every noble lady in the room, told them all about his brave mom who took 10 knives to save him. Sarah laughed softly. He is going to be a handful when he grows up. He already is. Kyle stood beside her, and together they looked out at their kingdom. Do you ever think about that night? Sarah asked. What would have happened if I hadn't been at Tony's grill that night? Every single day, Kyle admitted. I would have lost everything. Theo, the kingdom, my sanity, and I would still be dead inside. Sarah leaned against him, careful not to disturb the sleeping child. It's strange. That was the worst night of my life. And also, the night my life truly began. Not strange. Kale kissed the top of her head. Fate. Destiny. Whatever you want to call it. You were meant to be there. Meant to save him. Meant to find us. Do you really believe that? I believe that some things are too important to be accidents. Sarah thought about that, about Daniel, about the cancer that took him, about the years of grief that followed, about Tony's grill, and the boy, and the 10 knives that should have killed her. Maybe, she said slowly, all of it happened for a reason. Maybe losing Daniel wasn't punishment. Maybe it was preparation for this, for Theo, for you. Kyle held her tighter. I don't know why the universe works the way it does, he said, but I know that I am grateful. Grateful that you were in Tony's grill, grateful that you stood when everyone else ran, grateful that you lived. He turned her to face him. And I vow to spend every day of my life making sure you never regret it. Sarah looked at him, at this man who was also a dragon, at this king who had become her husband, at this broken soul who had found healing in her arms. I could never regret it, she said. How could I regret finding my family? She looked at Theo, sleeping peacefully in his father's arms, her son now, officially, and forever. I lost a child, she whispered, and the universe gave me another one. I lost hope, and the universe gave me a reason to hope again. I lost everything, and somehow I ended up with more than I ever dreamed possible. That's how it works sometimes, Kyle said. The worst moments of our lives lead us to the best ones. Sarah thought of the 10 knives, of the blood and pain and terror, of the moment she thought she was dying, and she realized something. She had been dying, not from the wounds, from the grief, from the emptiness, from the 2 years of existing without really living. The knives hadn't killed her. They'd woken her up. In a quiet chamber elsewhere in the castle, a portrait hung on the wall. It showed a woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. Lyra Draven, the former queen, the mother who had given her life for her son. No one was in the room, but if anyone had been watching, they might have noticed something strange. The woman in the portrait seemed to be smiling, more than usual, and if they looked very closely, they might have seen her lips move, forming 2 simple words. Thank you. Lyra had watched over her son for 2 years, had seen his loneliness, had felt his grief, had wished desperately for someone to fill the void she had left behind, and now, finally, someone had. Sarah Walker, a waitress from nowhere, a woman with nothing, a mother who had lost her own child and found the strength to love again. Lyra could rest now. Her son was safe and her husband was healing. Her family was whole again. And somewhere beyond the veil, another child was waiting. Daniel, she said, taking the hand of a little boy with dark hair and bright eyes. Your mama is happy now. Are you ready to watch over her from here? The boy nodded, his smile radiant. Together, they turned to watch the balcony, where Sarah stood with her new family. 2 children who had left the world too soon. 2 mothers who had given everything for love. 2 families, separated by death, united by sacrifice. Some stories end with happily ever after, but the best stories know that ever after is not an ending, it's just the beginning. And for Sarah Walker, the woman who took 10 knives for a child she had never met, the woman who stood when everyone else ran, the woman who found love in the most unexpected place, the best was yet to come. If this story touched something in your soul, if you saw yourself in Sarah, or Kyle, or Theo, take a moment to subscribe. Hit that notification bell, because stories like this remind us that even in our darkest moments, hope exists, love exists, second chances exist. You just have to be brave enough to reach for them. And sometimes, all it takes is the courage to stand between a child and 10 knives, even when everyone else looks away.